The scent of fresh coffee fills the air as I sit by the window of my small but sunlit kitchen. Outside, golden leaves flutter across the porch, and inside, silence feels safe for once. My name is Claire Evans. I'm 32 years old, a research coordinator at a biotech firm, and this morning, I watered my plants, paid my mortgage, and finally finished unpacking the last box in my living room. On paper, it's ordinary. Quiet. Stable. But nothing about how I got here was simple. Sometimes people assume peace comes after victory. For me, it came after survival. After learning that not all families protect you, and that love without strings isn't something you're given. It's something you fight to build. This is not a story about revenge. It's a story about finally saying no. And walking away before they burn you again. When I was 5, my little sister Rachel was born. I still remember the way my mother held her in the hospital room, like the world had finally given her something worth loving. My father, Thomas, hovered over them with his camcorder, filming every blink and yawn. No one noticed me holding a balloon in the corner, trying to stay visible without being in the way. That was the beginning. Rachel had dimples and perfect curls. She was everything my parents wanted. Mom monogrammed her name on pillows and hung them all over the house. Meanwhile, I slept under a generic comforter from Walmart. No embroidery. No initials. By the time I was 7, I had learned to speak only when spoken to. I once brought home a watercolor painting of a sky I imagined, lavender clouds and silver trees. I handed it to my mother while she was feeding Rachel. She glanced at it, then said flatly, "Maybe next time, paint something real." Rachel made a sunset with crayons yesterday. It was beautiful. I nodded. Folded the painting. Never picked up a brush again. At school, I was the quiet girl who always finished her homework early. At home, I did dishes, vacuumed, and folded laundry while Rachel played piano and got clapped for. If I said anything about it, Mom would remind me, "You're the older sister. You should know better. You should give more. Give more." That phrase clung to me like a stain. I gave up asking for birthday parties. Gave up inviting friends over. Gave up wondering why Rachel got new sneakers while mine had holes. One day, Dad looked at my report card, straight A's, and said, "Good. Now help your sister with her spelling." He never asked how I felt. Not once. When I got accepted into the regional writing competition at age 12, I begged them to come. The final round was held at the city library. I won first place. The prize was a certificate and a $50 bookstore voucher. I waited outside with the award in my hand. They never showed. Turns out, Rachel had a dress rehearsal for her choir show. Mom said she couldn't be 2 places at once. That night, I taped the certificate behind my bedroom door. Then I sat on the floor and told myself it didn't matter. That I didn't need anyone clapping for me. I just needed to be free someday. And from that day on, I started planning my exit. I bought my first home when I was 29. It wasn't a mansion, just a quiet 3-bedroom house in a small neighborhood near Napa. The yard had overgrown hedges, peeling paint, and a back porch that creaked when you walked across it. But to me, it was sacred. I had saved for nearly a decade. Every promotion, every skipped vacation, every extra shift went into that down payment. I painted every wall by hand. Installed every cabinet knob. Picked every curtain. This house wasn't a prize. It was proof I had survived. 3 months after moving in, a message from my mother popped up. "Claire. Call me. It's about Rachel. It's important." I didn't respond. Rachel and I hadn't spoken in years. Last I heard, she was dating a man named Ethan, some investment banker from New York. The only reason they remembered I existed now couldn't be good. 2 weeks later, I received an invitation. Rachel and Ethan's engagement celebration, Saturday at 6 p.m., champagne attire. Tucked inside the envelope was a note scribbled by my mother. "Please be decent. Don't make this about yourself. Be a good sister." That was how they always said it. Not "can't wait to see you." Not "we'd love to reconnect." Just demands, disguised as manners. I didn't plan to go. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe closure, dragged me there. The party was held at a rental villa tucked between vineyards. Silk linens. Ice sculptures. String quartets. It looked like it had been plucked straight out of a bridal magazine. I arrived wearing a simple navy dress, a modest gift in hand, a silver photo frame engraved with "Wishing you joy, Claire." No one noticed me at first. I was fine with that. Until I felt a gentle tap on my shoulder. It was my mother. Lipstick perfect, pearls around her neck, voice smooth like rehearsed hospitality. "Your father would like a word. He's waiting in the side lounge." She smiled like it was a family tradition, not a setup. I followed. Dad was standing by a large window, swirling his wine glass. The room was empty except for a marble coffee table and 2 white chairs. For a moment, we just stood there in silence. Then he said it. "Rachel's starting a new life. She needs stability. You, on the other hand, you live alone." I didn't respond. I didn't blink. "You're not even using that house properly. We think it would be a beautiful wedding gift." I turned to him slowly. "You want me to give Rachel my home?" My mother entered, stepping behind him like backup. "You've always been independent. You don't need that space like she does. This is her fresh start." I let out the smallest laugh. The kind that escapes when you're too stunned to cry. "You're not serious." My father's jaw tightened. "Family sacrifices for each other, Claire. Don't be selfish." That word again. Selfish. I looked at both of them. The perfect parental duo. Calm. United. Entirely convinced I owed them everything, even the roof over my head. And in that moment, I knew. They hadn't come to reconnect. They came to collect. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just looked at them and said, "No. I'm not giving her my home." My father narrowed his eyes. My mother stepped closer, her tone soft but sharpened at the edges. "Claire, don't make a scene. This is supposed to be a celebration." I nodded once, slowly. "Then let's not ruin it." I walked out of the side room without another word. Back into the hum of polite conversations and clinking glasses. No one noticed the quiet war that had just taken place behind silk curtains. Rachel was laughing in the center of the room, surrounded by people holding champagne flutes. Her dress shimmered like a pageant crown. When our eyes met, she gave me a quick wave, like I was an acquaintance, not the sister who once braided her hair before school. I didn't wave back. I stayed only 15 more minutes. Didn't stay for cake. Didn't wait for photos. As I slipped out the side exit, my phone buzzed. It was Rachel. "Really? You're gonna ruin my special night over a stupid house?" I turned the screen off without replying. The following days were silent. No apologies. No second attempts. Just distance, the kind I used to dream of but now felt heavier than ever. 2 weeks later, a wedding invitation arrived. Cream-colored, embossed in gold. No handwritten note. No personal message. Just a line at the bottom. "We hope you'll do the right thing." Whatever that meant. I didn't RSVP. But I showed up anyway. Not because I wanted to. Not because I forgave them. But because I didn't want to give them the narrative of the jealous sister who refused to come. I wouldn't give them that power. The ceremony was held at a glass conservatory in Calistoga. Sunlight poured through tall windows. Musicians played soft piano arrangements. Waitstaff passed around champagne with silent precision. I wore a charcoal gray dress. Simple. Clean. Dignified. Rachel didn't acknowledge me. Neither did our parents. They were too busy performing perfection. I took a seat at the far end of the room, near a potted olive tree. No one spoke to me. That was fine. I was done trying. During cocktail hour, my mother approached again. Her voice was cold, polite. "Your father would like to speak with you again. Just for a moment." I stared at her. "If this is about the house, you're wasting your breath." She blinked slowly, then said with that familiar calm cruelty, "You're making this harder than it has to be." I stood up, pushed in my chair, and looked her square in the eyes. "No. You did that years ago." Then I walked away, out of the conservatory, through the gardens, past the string lights and photographers. No yelling. No confrontation. Just the sound of my heels on stone. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the one leaving. I felt like the one finally standing still. While they all spun out. I hadn't planned to stay long. But as I stepped outside to leave, the sky darkened, one of those sudden California storms that rolls in uninvited. So I lingered near the entrance, under an awning, watching lightning flicker behind the hills. That's when I heard raised voices. From inside the conservatory, near the cake table. One voice, my father's. Low, tight, dangerous. The other, my mother's, too polished to shout, but clipped with irritation. Then Rachel's voice cut through. Sharper. Shrill. Why is she even here if she's not going to support me? I stayed still. A few moments later, the wedding planner approached me, nervously wringing her hands. Miss Evans? The groom's parents would like a word with you. Privately. I followed her to a side room near the bridal suite. Inside stood a tall, graceful woman in her 60s and a man with silver-rimmed glasses, Ethan's parents. Margaret and Charles Rivers. They introduced themselves politely, but their eyes were searching. Measuring. We understand you're Rachel's sister, Margaret said softly. I nodded. We've heard pieces of the story, Charles added, but we'd like to hear it from you. I paused. Took a breath. Then, without embellishment, I told them everything. The childhood erasure. The one-sided sacrifices. The sudden demand for my home. The private confrontation at the engagement party. The silence that followed. I didn't dramatize. I didn't accuse. I just told the truth, plainly and quietly. When I finished, Margaret looked down at her gloves, then said. I see. Charles glanced toward the window, then muttered. That explains the tension. And the entitlement. They thanked me. Then excused themselves. I thought that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. 15 minutes later, as guests gathered for the toast, Charles stepped up to the mic instead of Ethan. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, before we raise our glasses, there's something we need to say. The room hushed. We believe marriage is not just between two people, but between two families. And we've had the chance tonight to learn more about the family we were about to join. Gasps. Margaret joined him at the mic, her voice steady. It's become clear to us that some stories aren't fairy tales, they're warnings. We will not be supporting this union. Rachel stood frozen at the center of the room, bouquet clutched tight, lips parted in disbelief. Ethan didn't move. Didn't say a word. He just stepped away from Rachel and walked toward his parents. I'm sorry, he told her quietly. But I can't marry into this. A silence thicker than thunder fell over the room. Guests shifted, murmured. Phones began recording. Rachel's hands shook. She looked around for support. None came. Even her best friend turned her eyes away. Then Rachel turned to me, eyes full of fury and panic. You did this. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because for once everyone else had seen it too. Rachel stormed out of the glass hall in her wedding gown, heels clicking angrily across the marble. Guests parted as she passed, unsure whether to comfort her or avoid the wreckage. My mother followed close behind, her voice low but biting. You couldn't just stay quiet, could you? I stood by the olive tree near the exit, hands folded. I didn't say a word. Not one. Don't play innocent. Her eyes narrowed. You poisoned them. No, I replied, calmly. You did. You just thought no one would ever taste it. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, my father appeared. His face red with fury, fists clenched at his sides. This is what you wanted. To humiliate your own sister. Your own family. For a second, I felt the familiar urge to shrink, to apologize just to make it stop. But I didn't. No, I said, voice steady. I wanted peace. You brought humiliation on yourselves. He stepped closer, jaw tight. Then someone placed a hand on his shoulder. Ethan. Don't, Ethan said quietly. Everyone's watching. And they were. No music. No toasts. No dancing. Just dozens of faces turned toward us, silent witnesses to the unraveling of a perfect lie. The wedding was over. The planner made a quiet announcement, due to an unforeseen family emergency, the evening will end early. We thank you for coming. One by one, guests began to leave. Some nodded at me as they passed. Others avoided eye contact altogether, unsure what side they had been on just an hour ago. I stayed until the hall emptied. Not because I wanted to gloat. Because I needed to see the end. Rachel sat alone on the edge of the fountain, makeup streaked, bouquet discarded beside her. My parents stood to the side, whispering sharply, already rewriting the story in their heads. But no one was listening anymore. As I walked to my car, a few raindrops fell, soft, cold, quiet. Ethan's mother passed me by the exit. She paused briefly. You did nothing wrong, she said. Some people never expect the truth to have a voice. I nodded. It doesn't always need to scream. Sometimes it just needs to stand still long enough to be seen. In the weeks after the wedding, there were no messages. No calls. Not even a half-hearted excuse or backhanded apology. Just silence. And for the first time, it didn't hurt. It felt honest. The story they'd tried to control for so long had unraveled in front of everyone. No spin, no scapegoats. Just the truth, raw and exposed. I returned to my house, the one they tried to take. I repainted the hallway walls a soft cream, replaced the porch light, and planted lavender near the back fence. Small things. Quiet things. But they made the house feel fully mine again. Sometimes I'd sit on the back steps in the morning, coffee in hand, just watching the sun rise through the trees. I didn't need to earn peace anymore. I simply chose it. One afternoon, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. My mother's. Inside, a single sentence. You've made things harder than they needed to be. That was it. No, I'm sorry. No ownership. Just one last attempt to shift the weight of their actions onto me. I folded the note carefully and placed it in a drawer. Not out of sentiment, but as a reminder. Some people never change. And some wounds only stop bleeding when you stop going back to the knife. Rachel moved to New York. I heard through mutual friends that Ethan never spoke to her again. My parents retreated from their social circles. Apparently, the truth doesn't go down well with champagne crowds. But none of that mattered anymore. Because I had finally chosen myself. Not out of anger. Not for revenge. But because I no longer needed their love to feel whole. The version of me that once begged for attention, craved approval, waited to be chosen, that girl was gone. In her place stood someone quieter, stronger. Someone who knew how to make her own space in the world. And that was enough. If you've ever been told to stay quiet for the sake of peace. If you've ever been made to feel like love must be earned through silence. I want you to know. You're not wrong for walking away. You're not selfish for choosing yourself. I didn't fight to destroy my family. I stood up to finally belong to myself. Forgiveness isn't about letting them off the hook. It's about letting go of who you were when they had power over you. And if you're ready, you can let go too. Not for them. For you.